Here are the headlines for Wednesday, August 7, 2024. Whack-A-Fallacy, a game for the election season? To enhance critical thinking during the upcoming election season, an individual created a game called Whack-A-Fallacy, inspired by the classic arcade game Whack-A-Mole. The objective is to identify logical fallacies used by politicians in their speeches and press conferences. By writing down common fallacies on a pad of paper and marking them each time they appear, players can rack up points and improve their critical thinking skills. Some examples of logical fallacies include hominem attacks, red herrings, false dilemmas, appeals to authority, and bandwagon effects. If this is the start of a crash, this is how Goldman Sachs is trading it. Goldman Sachs chief economist Jan Hatzius has increased the bank's 12-month recession probability from 10% to 25%, which may signal that the economy or market is already facing significant issues. Historically, Goldman Sachs has been overly optimistic about the economy and only revises its outlook when problems are severe. The last time the bank raised its recession odds in July 2022, the market experienced a significant downturn. In response to this potential economic instability, Goldman Sachs' thematic desk is pitching a short trade recommendation as a hedge against a possible crash. Coming clean on clean energy. It is a dirty business. The American Consumer Institute has released a report highlighting the environmental impacts of so-called green energy sources, including wind turbines, solar panels, and electric vehicle battery. The life cycle of these technologies involves significant environmental consequences, such as extraction and manufacturing processes that contaminate soil and water sources in underdeveloped nations, often using slave labor. China dominates the green energy supply chains but has subpar environmental standards, with refineries emitting 1.5 times more carbon dioxide than those in the European Union or the United States. The waste problem created by these technologies is also substantial, with over 90% of wind turbine blades, solar panels, and electric vehicle batteries ending up in landfills. Copper slumps as China dumps base metal into Asian warehouses. Copper inventories in Asian warehouses have surged to their highest levels since mid-2018, as the base metal that led the artificial intelligence trade is under pressure once again. Refined copper is flowing out of China into neighboring warehouses in South Korea and Taiwan, indicating further downside for prices ahead. According to Goldman's Adam Gillard, the copper surplus continues to build, with global visible inventory reaching 794,000 metric tons as of July, up from 262,000 metric tons on January 1. National security in a second Trump administration. A second term of Donald Trump's presidency would likely prioritize national security and economic interests, focusing on great power competition with China. Trump would aim to protect American technological advantages and industries by blunting Chinese control of critical minerals and commodities and ending exports at fire sale prices. The administration would increase tariffs on Chinese goods, pressure European and Indo-Pacific allies to mirror U.S. export control and sanctions regimes vis China, and prioritize sustaining and growing America's technological and innovative edge through investments in artificial intelligence and quantum sciences. Additionally, Trump would demand record defense spending, restore America's strength, and reinvigorate shipyards for defense and commercial purposes, with a focus on foreign military sales and their positive impact on the economy and allied interoperability. FBI raids New York home of ex-United Nations weapons inspector and anti-war pundit Scott Ritter. The home of Scott Ritter in upstate New York was raided by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI and state police on Wednesday. The FBI confirmed that this is part of an ongoing federal investigation into Ritter, but did not provide further details due to Department of Justice policy. Ritter is a former chief United Nations weapons inspector in Iraq and a vocal critic of United States foreign policy, particularly regarding the war in Ukraine. He recently had his passport seized by the State Department without explanation, which he revealed on social media just days before the FBI raid. Kentucky governor plans to collect sales tax on gold and silver despite new law. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear is continuing to collect sales tax on the sale of gold and silver, despite a new law repealing the levy and an attorney general opinion calling his line-item veto of the provision unconstitutional. The law defines bullion as bars, ingots, or coins made of gold, silver, platinum, palladium, or a combination of these metals, valued based on the content of the metal and not its form. Beshear had used a line-item veto to strike out the sales tax exemption for gold and silver, but Republican leadership deemed the veto unconstitutional and directed the Secretary of State to ignore it. The National Coin and Bullion Association has highlighted the dilemma for gold and silver dealers and buyers in Kentucky who are now faced with deciding whether to collect sales tax or risk penalties from the Kentucky Department of Revenue. NASA head considers Elon Musk's SpaceX to save stranded Boeing Starliner crew at International Space Station. NASA is considering using SpaceX's Crew 9 Dragon spacecraft to rescue 2 astronauts, Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, who have been stranded at the International Space Station for over 2 months. The crew was initially supposed to spend just a few days on the ISS, but their return has been delayed due to issues with Boeing's Starliner spacecraft. NASA's Commercial Crew Program Manager Steve Stitch stated that officials are carefully considering their options and have done planning to ensure SpaceX is ready to respond as a contingency. This move would be seen as a significant blow to Boeing's image, especially after the company's 737 MAX commercial jets were involved in mid-air mishaps. A rescue mission by SpaceX could also create undesirable news flow for Democrats who are opposed to Elon Musk during an election year. I'm ready to modify titles. What's the first title? The author criticizes the media for focusing on trivial matters, such as interviewing Bruce Springsteen about his favorite books, instead of covering important topics. They reference George Orwell's essay Politics and the English Language, which argues that politicians often use vague language to undermine democracy. The author also discusses the concept of fake news and how it has been used throughout history to discredit accurate reports. They argue that sound words and soundly written ideas are essential for a functioning democracy, citing John Dewey's statement that democracy implies tools for getting at the truth. Kamala Harris donated to defund police group pushing for permanent District of Columbia sanctuary city. Vice President Kamala Harris and Second Gentleman Doe Emhoff donated $1,000 to Legal Aid DC in 2023, a progressive legal group that supports defunding the police and making Washington, D.C. a permanent sanctuary city for immigrants living in the United States without proper documentation. This donation has raised questions about Harris's ties to controversial activists, as she had previously supported left-wing policies before becoming the Democratic presidential nominee and later reversed her stance on several issues. Global government is no conspiracy theory. The concept of global governance is often viewed as necessary for addressing existential risks, such as pandemics, financial crises, and environmental disasters. However, this perspective overlooks the unique risks that come with global government itself, including the threat of totalitarianism and the amplification of policy errors. The real problem lies not with interconnectedness, but with the project of managing existential risk through global governance, which can lead to authoritarian attempts to stave off crises, resulting in a future of permanent crisis and breakdown. Kansas police chief who led raid of newspaper violated law. Prosecutors. The Marion County Record newspaper staff was recently cleared of any wrongdoing by district attorneys from Sedgwick and Riley counties in Kansas, after an investigation into the paper's alleged illegal obtainment of a local restaurant owner's driving record. The probe revealed that the staff had accessed the record through the Kansas Department of Revenue's website with assistance from an employee, which is not a crime under state law. However, the district attorneys criticized former Marion Police Chief Gideon Cody for obstructing justice during the investigation and stated that he could be charged with either a felony or misdemeanor as a result. The grand old party plan to handle Tim Walz, ideological soulmates of Harris. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is set to be announced as the running mate of Vice President Kamala Harris in the upcoming presidential election. Republicans are eager to portray Walz as a radical left-wing politician, citing his past comments about investing in a ladder company to help migrants scale former President Donald Trump's border wall and his support for giving undocumented individuals health care and driver's licenses in Minnesota. The Republican National Committee Chairman Michael Whatley said that the party will focus on highlighting Waltz's previous statements and actions to define him as out of touch with American values. Natural gas soars as 1,000-soldier Ukraine raid into Russia captures key gas facility. Russian forces have thwarted a major ground assault from Ukrainian forces into the Kursk region of Russia, which President Vladimir Putin described as a large-scale provocation. The attack involved up to 1,000 militants and resulted in at least 315 casualties on the Ukrainian side. Russian military officials reported that Ukraine lost 54 armored vehicles, including 7 tanks, and that Ukrainian shelling killed 2 people, including a paramedic and an ambulance driver, and wounded 24 others. Thousands of Russians have reportedly fled the assault, which is still ongoing in the Kursk region, where gas prices are surging due to Ukraine's capture of the Sudza gas measurement station. Do not fly. Alert over Iran issued for airlines during oddly specific night hours. Egypt has issued a rare notice to air missions alert instructing its airlines to avoid Iranian airspace for a 3-hour period overnight and early morning hours of Thursday. The notice specifies that no flight plans will be accepted overflying such territory from 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. GMT, prompting other countries, including the United Kingdom, to issue similar alerts. Reuters reports that Egyptian government sources claim Cairo was notified by Iranian authorities to avoid traversing Iranian airspace due to overnight military exercises, sparking speculation of a possible major Iranian response against Israel following the killing of senior members of militant groups Hamas and Hezbollah. Jurisdiction, stripping, or court killing. The No Kings Act is a decapitation of the Constitution. The No Kings Act, proposed by Democratic senators, would allow Congress to dictate the meaning of laws in specific cases, overriding the courts and effectively reversing the landmark Marbury v. Madison decision that established judicial review. This move would be a radical change in the United States constitutional system, undermining the rule of law and allowing popular justice to be meted out through legislative fiat. The proposal has been criticized as a partisan attempt to strip the judiciary of its power and undermine the Constitution. Stocks rebound overnight as dovish Bank of Japan gains, bond yields, and black gold rise. For a brief period overnight, the market experienced a surge in optimism after the Bank of Japan unexpectedly announced that it would not raise interest rates until market stability resumed. However, this enthusiasm was short-lived as selling pressure began once the United States cash equity market opened, exacerbated by an unsuccessful 10-year Treasury auction and escalating tensions between Ukraine and Russia. By the close of trading, all major indexes had hit their lows for the day, with small caps and NASDAQ experiencing the largest losses, plummeting from a 2% gain to a 1% loss. Keep the reins tight on big directional bets. These are the 3 biggest questions on Goldman's top traders' mind. Tony Pasquariello, the head of Goldman Sachs hedge fund coverage, remarks that the past week has brought a level of dislocation in the markets not seen since the depths of the COVID pandemic. This trading period is one that will likely be remembered for a long time due to its significant market disruption. On verge of credit shock, credit card debt posts biggest drop since COVID crash as rates hit record high, becomes on verge of credit shock, credit card debt posts biggest drop since COVID-19 crash as rates hit record high. The Federal Reserve reported June consumer credit data that was significantly lower than expected, with total consumer credit rising by only $8.9 billion. This decline in consumer credit is often a sign of economic contraction. Non-revolving credit, which includes student and auto loans, rose by $10.6 billion, but this increase was largely due to students repaying loans after the Biden repayment moratorium ended. In contrast, revolving credit, or credit card debt, unexpectedly fell by $1.7 billion, a rare occurrence that often precedes major economic downturn. The average interest-bearing credit card account rate has reached a record high of 22.76%, and with consumers strapped for cash and equity, there may be limited room for further credit card maxing out before reality sets in. iAdoption Reality Check Technology CEO warns very little is fundamentally different because of general artificial intelligence. Elliott Management, an iconic hedge fund, warned investors that artificial intelligence is overhyped, with many applications not yet ready for widespread use. The company expressed skepticism about the current hype surrounding AI, citing concerns that it may not be cost-efficient or trustworthy. Elliott also questioned whether hyperscalers like Meta, Google, Amazon Web Services, and Microsoft will continue to spend record amounts on data center capital expenditures, specifically on graphics processing units from NVIA, if they do not see a significant return on investment. The company's view is echoed by Goldman Sachs head of research, Jim Covello, who has also expressed concerns about the hype surrounding AI. Fluid markets, volatility, fear, and fragility. The Chicago Board Options Exchange Volatility Index is at 29, up 4 to 5% on the day, but still lagging behind the CBO EVVIX index, indicating that market conditions remain volatile and uncertain. No debate required with natural gas. Natural gas is a critical energy source that can unite people across the United States, particularly in Pennsylvania, where it has created nearly 123,000 high-paying jobs, generated $40 billion in economic activity each year, and paid more than $6 billion to loaners in royalties. Embracing natural gas has led to generational progress in the state's economy, consumer benefits, and environmental sustainability, with a significant reduction in power sector emissions. As Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro noted, it is not necessary to choose between protecting the planet and protecting jobs, as natural gas can provide both. Stolen valor? Waltz under fire for bailing on Iraq tour? Then lying about combat deployment? Tim Waltz, Kamala Harris' running mate, is facing criticism for his extreme left-wing policies and embellishing his military record. Waltz joked about helping illegal immigrants enter the country and signed a law giving them driver's licenses. He also delayed deploying the National Guard during the George Floyd riots. Retired command sergeants Major Thomas Behrens and Paul Hare accused Waltz of abandoning his National Guard battalion to run for Congress, despite being aware that he could have requested permission from the Pentagon to seek office while on active duty. Waltz has been accused of stolen valor by J.D. Vance, who criticized him for lying about his military service and pretending to be something he's not. Combating China's legacy chip threat, time to revive Section 421. The People's Republic of China is seeking to dominate the production of legacy microchips, which are used in various technologies including military equipment, by flooding the market with cheap products. To combat this threat to national security, Congress should reinstate and modernize Section 421 of the 1974 Trade Act, allowing the federal government to evaluate and recommend tariffs on specific Chinese imports. This section was previously used to impose duties on Chinese tire imports in 2009, and its revival is supported by bipartisan lawmakers. However, implementing sanctions may lead to higher costs for American consumers and companies sourcing products from other global suppliers. Nomura, the elevator down for stocks is played out, but despite the recent decline in extreme volatility, United States equities' vol metrics still reflect an unusually large distribution of potential market outcomes, indicating ongoing stress for investors who have been unwinding their short position. This is surprising given years of market conditioning that led investors to sell during periods of high volatility and buy during price dips. I thought gold was a safe haven. Why did it tank with stocks? A sharp decline in the global stock market on Monday wiped off $6.4 trillion from global stock markets, with Japan's Nikkei 225 index plummeting 13.2%. The sell-off was attributed to worries about a recession and concerns that the Federal Reserve waited too long to cut interest rates. Gold and silver also declined, with gold dropping 3.2% at its low before rallying to finish down 1.3% on the day, while silver plunged 7.2% at its intraday low. However, analysts note that gold often sells off early in a bear market for stocks, only to recover more quickly. Despite the downturn, gold is still up over 15% on the year with bullish factors firmly in place, and some view Monday's sell-off as a buying opportunity. Stocks plunge after ugly 10-year auction tails bigly. Today's 10-year bond auction was very ugly, with the sale stopping at 3.96% and tailing by a little more than 3 basis points. The bid-to-cover ratio of 2.32 was the lowest since December of 2022. Indirect bidders took 66.2%, while direct bidders took 16%, leaving dealers with 17.9%. This has raised concerns about whether bond operators will be happy digesting tomorrow's $25 billion 30-year sale. Diamond Hands Mint. Gox creditors HODL Bitcoin despite 10-year wait. Max Gox creditors who have waited over a decade to recover their funds have finally started receiving their Bitcoin, but surprisingly, many are choosing to hold on to it rather than sell. Despite the distribution of nearly half of the 85,000 lost coins being returned, the market has not seen a significant sell-off, with some attributing this to the long-term hodler mentality of the creditors who were early adopters of the cryptocurrency. Experts suggest that these individuals are holding on to their Bitcoin due to expectations of future price appreciation and potentially higher returns, as well as to delay capital gains taxes or await more favorable market conditions. Goldman top tech trader, growing investor debate whether to trust this move or not. A day that was expected to see gains in technology stocks after the Bank of Japan announced it would not raise interest rates has instead seen several failed breakouts due to growing investor skepticism about the recent rally. According to Goldman Sachs' Peter Callahan, investors are debating whether to trust this move and what areas to invest in for the second half of 2024, with some considering more diversification across industries such as semiconductors and artificial intelligence. Confidence is the underappreciated economic engine. Economic confidence can significantly impact economic activity, and even a slight change in confidence can have substantial effects. A 6% decline in economic activity, which may seem insignificant, is actually rare, having occurred only once since 1947. Confidence surveys can be tricky to interpret, as they do not always correlate directly with the economy, and are influenced by various factors such as political views, stock market valuations, and real estate valuations, and real estate value. For instance, the University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index is near its lowest level in 45 years, despite low unemployment rates. Additionally, changes in wealth, whether realized or unrealized, can have an outsized influence on confidence. Mid-Atlantic and Northeast in crosshairs of Tropical Storm Debby. Tropical Storm Debby is currently located south-southeast of Charleston, South Carolina, and is expected to bring significant flooding rain across the southeast region of the United States. As the storm moves north, it will dump heavy rains across the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast regions later this week. Meteorologist Ryan Mulway predicts that heavier rain will become a concern heading into Raleigh and eventually Charlotte by Thursday morning. The National Hurricane Center's Cone of Uncertainty model shows the storm's future track over the Mid-Atlantic area by late week and into the Northeast by the weekend, with weather models in unanimous agreement on the storm's projected path. White House believes Iran backing down from Israel's strike after diplomatic blitz. The Washington Post reports that intensive international diplomatic efforts may be having an effect in preventing Iran from launching a new attack on Israel. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has been engaged in intense diplomacy with allies and partners, communicating the message directly to Iran and Israel that everyone in the region should take stock of the situation and make decisions that will calm tensions, not exacerbate them. The White House has also promised to come to Israel's military aid in the scenario of a major Iranian and Hezbollah attack, causing Tehran leaders to think twice, according to one senior Biden administration official. Comparisons to 1987 are multiplying. Global equity markets rebounded yesterday after 2 days of financial instability sparked by a weak jobs report and the unwinding of speculative yen carry trades. The SAM 500 added 1.04%, while the Nikkei index surged 10.23% after plummeting 12.40% the day before. U.S. bond yields rose to retrace some of their losses over the past 2 days, with the yield curve bear steepening as 2-year and 10-year yields increased by 5.5 basis points and 10.3 basis points respectively. WTI extends bounce off 6-month lows after 6 straight weekly crude draw. The price of oil rebounded overnight following the Bank of Japan's dovish decision, despite reports from the American Petroleum Institute showing across-the-board inventory builds. However, the official data from the Department of Energy showed crude stocks falling for the 6th straight week, contrary to a PI's reported build. Total United States crude stocks fell to their lowest since February, while the Biden administration added 736,000 barrels to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, the biggest weekly addition since June. Disney chief financial officer admits lower-income consumers are stressed and shaving time off at parks. Walt Disney Company shares have fallen in pre-market trading following mixed third-quarter results. Despite reporting profitability in its streaming and movie businesses 1 quarter ahead of schedule, the entertainment giant's park attendance numbers and per-visitor spending are being pressured by a worsening consumer downturn. Goldman analyst Michael notes that while Disney's DTC EBIT losses beat expectations, Experience's EBIT missed in the quarter and is expected to decline due to moderation of consumer demand. How progressive is Tim Walz? Kamala Harris selected Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate, which some consider a radical left-wing choice. Walz has implemented several progressive policies in Minnesota, including increasing taxes to 9.85% at $193,000 of earnings for a single filer and adding a 1% surtax on net investment income above $1 million. He also made an estimated 81,000 undocumented immigrants eligible for driver's licenses and health insurance through the state's public marketplace. Additionally, Walz funded free college programs for students with family incomes under $80,000, including those who are undocumented